The midnight sky over Nova Thera hung like a bruised canvas, its lone moon casting silver light across the jagged mountain range that sheltered the human settlement. Caleb Mercer stood at the edge of his family's property, breathing in the alien air that, even after 3 years, still tasted faintly metallic. The 17-year-old scanned the perimeter of Northridge Settlement, a collection of prefabricated structures and hand-built additions that housed the 200 remaining colonists from Earth. Their arrival had been unplanned, an emergency landing after their interstellar vessel malfunctioned beyond repair. What should have been a journey to establish a new colony on Proxima Centauri's habitable planet had instead stranded them here on this uncharted world with its strange blue flora and fauna, and the even stranger indigenous species that humans called the Azure Ones. "Caleb!" His father's voice boomed from their dwelling. "Secure the livestock before nightfall." The sensor picked up movement in the southern woods. Caleb sighed, raking fingers through his sandy hair. "On it, Dad," he called back, reaching for the shock prod that served as both herding tool and defensive weapon. The family's 6 goats, descendants of the few livestock embryos successfully gestated after landing, needed little encouragement to enter their shelter for the night. As Caleb secured the reinforced gate, a sound unlike any animal call he recognized drifted from the dense foliage beyond their cleared land. A soft moan, almost human but not quite. Caleb froze, his hand reaching instinctively for the hunting knife at his belt, a blade fashioned from the hard shell of a native crustacean, sharper than any steel from Earth. The settlement's rules were clear. No venturing beyond the perimeter after dusk, and no contact with locals unless authorized by the council. But the sound came again. Weaker this time, not threatening, wounded. "This is stupid," Caleb muttered to himself, even as he slipped past the property boundary and into the towering blue-leaf trees. The underbrush thinned quickly to a small clearing, and there, collapsed against the trunk of a massive tree, lay a figure that stole Caleb's breath away. A girl, approximately his age, her skin the color of the afternoon sky. An azure one. Blood, dark violet rather than red, seeped through tears in her simple leather garment. Her eyes fluttered open at his approach, 3-lidded, with pupils like onyx shards against irises the color of burnished gold. Fear flooded her expression. "Stay back," she hissed in surprisingly good English, though her accent bent the words into strange shapes. Many of the Azure Ones had learned the human language through limited trade exchanges, though most settlements maintained strict separation. "You're hurt," Caleb said, kneeling a few paces away, showing his empty palms. "What happened to you?" The girl attempted to stand, but collapsed with a grimace of pain. Instinctively, Caleb moved forward to help, but she recoiled, pressing herself against the tree trunk. "Do not touch me," she warned, one hand reaching for a small bone dagger at her waist. Despite her wounded state, her movements were precise, disciplined. Caleb kept his distance, crouching to appear less threatening. "I'm not going to hurt you. I want to help." "Why would a human help one of my kind?" Her golden eyes narrowed with suspicion. "Your people fear us. Hunt us, sometimes." "That's not," Caleb began, then stopped. He couldn't honestly deny her accusation. There had been incidents, misunderstandings that escalated to violence on both sides. "I'm not like that," he said instead. A spasm of pain crossed her face. She clutched at a wound on her side, fresh violet blood seeping between her blue fingers. "What happened?" Caleb asked again, more gently this time. "Kuroshi warriors," she managed. "My people, scattered. I ran." Caleb had heard of the Kuroshi, a nomadic tribe of Azure Ones known for their raids on other settlements, both human and indigenous. The council had classified them as extremely dangerous. "Let me help you," he said, moving closer. "No, your kind fears mine. You will call your warriors." "I won't," Caleb promised, though he wasn't sure why he felt so certain. "My name is Caleb Mercer." A long moment passed as she studied him, her alien eyes seemingly peering into his soul. Finally, she spoke. "I am Liara, daughter of Shaman Taraval of the Sci-Fi." Caleb barely suppressed a gasp. The Sci-Fi were the most powerful tribe of Azure Ones in the region, warriors and hunters with a strict honor code that made them unpredictable to human diplomats. They were the main reason the council enforced such strict boundaries. "The Sci-Fi? But you're far from our territory, yes." She winced as she shifted. "I was Exploring. The Kuroshi ambushed our hunting party. The others, her voice trailed off. A howl echoed through the forest. Close. Too close. Liara's head snapped up, her expression tightening with fear. Night stalkers, she whispered. They track blood. We must leave this place. Decision crystallized in Caleb's mind with startling clarity. If he left her, she would die. If he reported her, the council would quarantine her, study her, and likely use her as a bargaining chip with the Sairi, potentially igniting conflict. Can you walk at all? He asked. Liara's eyes narrowed. Why? Because I'm going to help you. But I need to get you somewhere safe, somewhere hidden. The barn. His father rarely went inside except to feed their animals at dawn. The storage loft would provide shelter and concealment. Liara struggled to her feet with Caleb's cautious assistance, her body radiating heat that felt several degrees warmer than a human's. She smelled of unfamiliar spices and copper. If you betray me, she whispered as they began their halting journey, my father will not rest until your entire settlement is ashes. Caleb swallowed hard but kept moving. Noted. The journey back took triple the time it should have, with frequent stops when Liara's strength faltered. A sudden howl from the darkness made them both freeze. The eerie sound was answered by another closer call. Night hunters, Liara whispered. They smell blood. As if summoned by her words, a massive shape emerged from the underbrush. A predator, resembling a wolf but with 6 legs and blue-black fur that absorbed moonlight rather than reflecting it. Its eyes glowed amber in the darkness. Don't run, Liara warned, gripping Caleb's arm. Stand your ground. The creature stalked forward, nostrils flaring as it scented Liara's wounds. Caleb's fingers tightened around his knife, though he knew it would provide little defense against such a beast. On my signal, Liara breathed. Make as much noise as possible. The predator crouched, muscles tensing to spring. Now, Liara shouted. Caleb yelled at the top of his lungs, waving in his arms wildly. Liara joined him, producing a high-pitched ululation that hurt Caleb's ears. The predator hesitated, startled by the sudden cacophony. In that moment of confusion, Liara grabbed a rock and hurled it with surprising force. It struck the creature directly between its eyes. With a yelp of pain, the beast retreated into the darkness. It will return with others, Liara said. We must hurry. They had covered barely half the distance to the settlement when the howls returned. Multiple voices now calling to each other through the darkness. The night hunters had found reinforcements. They're circling us, Liara said. Her breathing labored. We won't outrun them. Caleb scanned their surroundings frantically. 20 meters ahead, a massive blue-bark tree rose above the forest canopy, its lower branches within jumping distance. There, he pointed. Can you climb? In my condition? Barely. But determination hardened her golden eyes. Lead the way. They reached the tree just as shadows detached from the surrounding forest. 3 night hunters, their 6-legged bodies slinking low to the ground, amber eyes fixed on the wounded prey. Caleb boosted Liara to the lowest branch, then scrambled up behind her as snapping jaws missed his legs by centimeters. The beast circled the tree, occasionally rising on hind legs to scratch at the trunk with clawed feet. One leapt surprisingly high, its teeth clacking together just below the branch where they perched. They're persistent, Caleb muttered, helping Liara climb to a higher, safer position. They can wait for days, Liara replied grimly. It is their way. They settled on a wide branch 4 meters above the ground. Liara leaned back against the trunk, pain evident in every line of her body. Let me see your wounds, Caleb said. There is nothing you can do without proper medicine. I can at least clean them, prevent infection. He tore a strip from his shirt. May I? After a moment's hesitation, Liara nodded. Caleb gently cleaned the worst of the wounds, a deep puncture on her upper arm and a long slash across her ribs. The violet blood clotted quickly, forming a tough, scale-like covering over the injuries. Your blood, Caleb observed, fascinated. It hardens. A defense mechanism. It prevents blood loss and infection. Liara watched him work with curious eyes. Your kind does not have this. No, our blood stays liquid, makes things messier. A ghost of a smile touched her blue lips. Inefficient design. Caleb found himself smiling back. Yeah, well, we make up for it in other ways. They fell into silence as night deepened around them. The hunters continued their vigil below, occasionally testing the tree's climbability before settling back into watchful waiting. The alien moon rose higher, casting silver light through the canopy. "Tell me of your settlement," Lyra said eventually. "Why do your people stay in one place?" "It's safer. We can build defenses, grow food, raise animals." Caleb studied her curiously. "The Sci-Fi don't have permanent homes?" "We follow the Great Migration, herds of Tama beasts that provide meat, hides, bones for tools. We build temporary camps, move with the seasons." Her expression grew distant. "Though some argue we should establish permanent territories, like the Valley tribes." "Is that what the fighting is about? Territory?" Lyra's golden eyes flashed. "The Karoshi fight for dominance, not territory. They seek to rule all Na'vi by force rather than honor." "Na'vi? Our true name, it means children of the first water." She tilted her head. "What do your people call us?" "Azure ones," Caleb admitted, "because of your skin." For the first time, Liara laughed, a melodic sound that made Caleb's heart skip. "How literal, and what do you call yourselves?" "Humans, though I guess to you we're aliens." "We call your kind the pale visitors," she replied, "for obvious reasons." The night passed slowly. They took turns watching while the other dozed, though Caleb suspected Liara never truly slept. Her golden eyes remained half open, tracking every movement below. Dawn broke with startling suddenness, as it often did on Nova Thera. The night hunters, creatures of darkness, retreated reluctantly into the deeper forest as sunlight filtered through the canopy. "They'll be back at nightfall," Liara said, carefully testing her wounded arm. "But the settlement is close now?" "Yes, less than 10 minutes if we move quickly." They descended the tree cautiously. Liara moved with greater ease than the previous night, her remarkable healing abilities already at work. Still, she accepted Caleb's steadying hand without comment. Navigating the final stretch, crossing the open yard to the barn, required waiting until his parents' dwelling lights dimmed for the night. When they finally reached the barn, Caleb helped Liara climb the rough ladder to the hayloft, wincing at every sound that seemed too loud in the quiet night. "Stay here," he whispered. "I'll bring medical supplies." He returned 20 minutes later with a smuggled medkit, water, and food rations. Liara sat huddled in the corner, her golden eyes reflecting the moonlight filtering through cracks in the wooden walls. "These are puncture wounds," Caleb observed as he cleaned the injuries on her arm and side. "Spear tips?" Liara nodded. "Karoshi poisoned their weapons. But the Sci-Fi," a touch of pride entered her voice. "Our bodies neutralize most toxins." "Most?" Caleb questioned, applying antiseptic that made her hiss between sharp teeth. "I am still weakened." Her eyes studied him as he worked. "Why do you help me, Caleb Mercer?" He paused, genuinely considering the question. "Because it's right," he said finally. "Because you needed help, and I could give it." "Such simplicity," she murmured. "My people would say you act without cunning." "Is that an insult?" A ghost of a smile touched her blue lips. "Perhaps, or perhaps it is rare enough to be worthy of note." As he finished bandaging her wounds, Caleb retrieved an old thermal blanket from a storage crate, one of the few comforts he possessed, salvaged from their crashed ship. "Here, Dirtbust," he said, wrapping it around her shoulders. "The nights get cold." Liara touched the blanket with wonder. "This material, we have nothing like it. It's from Earth. It holds heat better than anything we've found here." She pulled it tighter around herself. "Thank you, Caleb Mercer." That night, Liara developed a fever, her blue skin flushing to an alarming indigo as her body fought the Karoshi poison. Caleb kept vigil, cooling her forehead with damp cloths and helping her drink when consciousness returned briefly. "The poison, stronger than I thought," she gasped during one lucid moment. "My father would know the cure, herbs from the eastern valleys." "Tell me what they look like," Caleb urged. "I'll find them." "No, too dangerous. Kuroshi's still hunting." But Caleb insisted, and eventually Liara described a plant with silver-veined leaves and deep purple berries that grew near water sources. When she lapsed back into fevered sleep, Caleb slipped out of the barn and headed for the eastern creek that ran through the settlement's territory. The night was dangerous for humans alone in the forest, but fear for Liara drove him forward. He searched frantically along the creek banks, using his flashlight sparingly to avoid attracting predators. After an hour of increasingly desperate searching, he spotted it. a cluster of bushes with the distinctive silver-veined leaves Liara had described. He was reaching for the berries when a sound froze him in place. The distinctive click, hiss of a Na'vi hunting party communicating. Kuroshi warriors, still searching for their escaped prey. Caleb doused his light and pressed himself into the underbrush, barely daring to breathe as three blue-skinned figures moved along the opposite bank. Their faces were painted with jagged black markings, distinguishing them from the more geometric patterns Liara had described as Sci-Fi tradition. They passed without noticing him, but their presence confirmed Liara's fears. The Kuroshi hadn't given up their hunt. Caleb gathered the berries quickly and retreated toward the settlement, taking a circuitous route to avoid leaving an obvious trail. When he returned to the barn, Liara's condition had worsened. Her breathing came in shallow gasps, her skin now a deep, alarming shade of indigo. "I found them," he whispered, crushing the berries as she had instructed. "Stay with me, Liara." He mixed the crushed berries with water and helped her drink the bitter concoction. For several terrifying minutes, nothing happened. Then gradually her breathing eased. The unnatural color receded from her skin, returning to its normal azure hue. "You risked much," she murmured, eyes half-lidded with exhaustion. "I couldn't let you die," Caleb replied simply. Her hand found his in the darkness. "The Sci-Fi remember those who help us, Caleb Mercer, and those who harm us." Her golden eyes closed. "Remember that in the days to come." As days passed, Caleb established a routine. He performed his chores with exaggerated efficiency, creating small windows of time to check on Laura, bring her food and water, and change her bandages. The wounds began to heal with remarkable speed, the violet blood clotting into scales that gradually flaked away to reveal unblemished blue skin beneath. On the fourth night, he found her standing, testing her recovered strength by performing a series of fluid movements that reminded him of martial arts practices from Earth. "Your body heals quickly," he observed. "The Sci-Fi are warriors born," she replied. "Our bodies serve our will." Caleb settled on a hay bale, watching her graceful movements. "Tell me about your people." "The council says the Sci-Fi are dangerous, unpredictable." Liara's expression hardened. "Your council knows nothing. We are governed by honor and tradition. We protect our territory. We hunt to survive. We harm none who respect our boundaries." She paused. "Until your kind arrived, falling from the sky in your burning vessel, we lived in balance with the other tribes, but some, like the Kuroshi, attack others. The Kuroshi rejected the ancient ways. They take what is not earned. They kill for pleasure rather than necessity." She finished her exercise and sat beside him. "My father leads our tribe in both spiritual matters and warfare. He has tried to maintain peace with your settlement, despite the fears of many warriors." "I didn't know that," Caleb admitted. "We're told to stay away from all Azure Ones." "Azure Ones?" Liara repeated with a puzzled expression. "It's what we call your people, because of your skin." For the first time, Liara laughed, a melodic sound that made Caleb's heart skip. "How strange. We call ourselves the Na'vi, children of the first water." Her golden eyes studied him. "And we call your kind the pale visitors, for obvious reasons." A sudden commotion outside interrupted their conversation. Voices shouted orders, and the settlement's alarm bell began to ring. "What's happening?" Liara whispered, instantly alert. Caleb crept to a small gap in the barn wall. "Raiders," he breathed. "Human raiders from the Western Settlement." The Western Settlement had broken off from Northridge 3 years earlier, a splinter group that believed in aggressive expansion and resource acquisition rather than careful integration with their new world. They occasionally raided other human outposts for supplies and technology. "How many?" Layar asked, joining him at the wall. "At least 20. They're armed with shock batons and primitive firearms." He turned to her. "Stay hidden. If they search the barn—" "I will not cower while your people face danger," Liara interrupted. "I can help." "How? You're still injured, and if anyone sees you—" "The Sci-Fi know ways to fight that your people do not." She met his gaze steadily. "Trust me, Caleb Mercer." Before he could argue further, gunshots rang out. Through the gap, they saw 3 raiders cornering a young woman, Sarah, the settlement's apprentice medic. She clutched a bag of medical supplies to her chest, backing away from her pursuers. They will kill her for those supplies, Caleb said, already moving toward the ladder. I have to help. Liara followed him down. We help together. They slipped out of the barn, keeping to shadows as they approached the confrontation. One raider grabbed Sarah's arm, twisting until she cried out in pain. Let her go, Caleb shouted, stepping into view with his hunting knife drawn. The raiders turned, momentarily surprised, then burst into laughter. Look at this hero, one mocked. Think you can take all three of us, boy? Caleb swallowed his fear. I won't let you hurt her. Your choice, the leader growled, raising his shock baton. He lunged forward and suddenly crumpled to the ground as Liara materialized from the darkness, striking him at the base of his skull with the edge of her hand. The other raiders gaped at the blue-skinned apparition that seemed to have emerged from nowhere. Their hesitation gave Caleb the opening he needed. He tackled the nearest raider, driving him to the ground. The man was stronger, but Caleb had surprise on his side. They grappled in the dirt, each struggling for advantage. Liara moved like water, evading the third raider's wild swing and using his momentum to send him sprawling. She called out commands to Sarah in clear English. Run! Get help! The medic didn't need to be told twice. She bolted toward the settlement center, shouting for reinforcements. Caleb's opponent managed to flip him onto his back, pinning him with a knee to his chest. The raider raised a jagged piece of metal, ready to plunge it into Caleb's throat, until a blue hand seized his wrist, twisting with such force that bones cracked audibly. The raider screamed, releasing his weapon as Liara hauled him off Caleb with strength, belying her slender frame. The next bone I break will be in your neck, she hissed, her golden eyes blazing with cold fury. By the time settlement security arrived, led by a bewildered Sarah, the three raiders lay subdued on the ground, one unconscious, one with a broken wrist, and one with Caleb's knee planted firmly between his shoulder blades. What followed was chaos. Security officers stared in shock at Liara. Settlers emerged from their dwellings, pointing and whispering at the azure-skinned girl standing defiantly beside Caleb. Marcus Fletcher, the settlement's head of security, pushed through the crowd, his hand hovering over his sidearm. What in hell's name is going on here? He demanded. Mercer, explain yourself. Caleb stepped protectively in front of Liara. She helped us fight off these raiders. She saved Sarah's life, maybe mine too. She's Sayuri, Fletcher replied, as if that explained everything. How long have you been harboring her? She was injured. I found her in the woods 5 days ago. Murmurs rippled through the gathering crowd. Some faces showed fear, others curiosity, a few outright hostility. The Sayuri are dangerous, Fletcher said, his voice hard. She needs to be contained until the council decides what to do. No, Caleb's refusal silenced the crowd. She's under my protection. She's done nothing wrong. In fact, she just helped defend our settlement. Your protection? Fletcher's laugh was harsh. You're 17, Mercer. You have no authority here. Then I'll leave with her, Caleb said, surprising even himself with the declaration. If the settlement won't show gratitude to someone who helped us, then maybe it's not worth staying. Sarah stepped forward, still clutching her medical bag. He's right, Marcus. This girl saved me from those raiders. They would have killed me for these supplies. Fletcher's expression wavered. Before he could respond, a new sound cut through the night, a low, rhythmic drumming from beyond the settlement boundaries. It grew louder, accompanied by chanting in a language none of the humans recognized. Liara's eyes widened. My people come, she whispered to Caleb. They have found me. The settlement exploded into action. Guards rushed to defensive positions. Parents hurried children indoors. Fletcher barked orders for everyone to arm themselves. Wait, Caleb shouted. This doesn't have to be a fight. They're Sayuri warriors, Fletcher retorted. Fighting is what they do. Not always, Liara interrupted, her voice carrying surprising authority. My father comes to find his daughter. If he wanted war, you would already be burning. The drumming stopped abruptly. In the silence that followed, a single voice called out from beyond the perimeter fence. Return the daughter of Taroval, and no blood need be spilled this night. Fletcher looked to Caleb, then Liara, uncertainty clear on his face. How many warriors? Many, Liara answered simply. More than you have defenders. Let me talk to them, Caleb urged. With Liara, we can prevent bloodshed. After a tense deliberation with other settlement leaders, Fletcher reluctantly agreed. The main gate opened, and Caleb walked out with Liara at his side, heart hammering in his chest. Beyond the fence stood at least 100 Sayari warriors, their blue skin adorned with white tribal markings that seemed to glow in the moonlight. They carried spears, bows with notched arrows, and curved blades. At their center stood a commanding figure wearing an elaborate headdress of blue and white feathers, bone totems dangling from intricate braids. "Father," Lyra called out, moving forward. The shaman's stoic expression cracked with visible relief. "Daughter," he replied, his deep voice resonating across the open ground. "You live." "Thanks to this human," she said, gesturing to Caleb. "He found me wounded, gave me shelter, healed my injuries. He shared his food, water, and even his blanket when I was cold with fever." Taroval studied Caleb with unnerving intensity. "You saved my daughter?" Caleb swallowed hard. "Yes, sir. She was injured by Kuroshi warriors." A ripple of angry murmurs passed through the Sayari ranks at the mention of their enemies. "And you did this knowing she was Sayari?" the shaman pressed. "I did it because she needed help," Caleb answered honestly. "It didn't matter what tribe she belonged to." The shaman approached slowly, his warriors tensing protectively. He circled Caleb, examining him as one might inspect an unusual specimen. Finally, he stopped directly in front of the young human. "The Sayari have a saying," Taroval said. "An enemy's child in need tests the true warrior's heart." He turned to face his warriors, raising his voice. "This young human passed that test. He sheltered the daughter of your shaman. He tended her wounds. He shared his precious possessions when she suffered." To Caleb's astonishment, the imposing shaman suddenly dropped to one knee, pressing his fist to his chest in a formal salute. Behind him, as if following an unspoken command, every Sayari warrior did the same. "The Sayari acknowledge a debt of honor to Caleb Mercer," the shaman announced. "You have proven yourself a brother to our people." Fletcher and the other humans stood in stunned silence at the settlement gate. Liara moved to her father's side, speaking rapidly in their native tongue. The shaman listened, his expression growing increasingly grave. "My daughter tells me of your kindness," he said finally to Caleb, "and of the risk you took. Such courage deserves recognition." He straightened. "I, Taroval, invite you to feast with the Sayari as an honored guest." Before Caleb could respond, a commotion erupted from within the Sayari ranks. A warrior pushed forward, taller than the others, with a scar running from his temple to his jaw. "This is an outrage, shaman," he snarled in the Nayavi language. "The human should not be honored for returning what was rightfully ours." Liara stepped between the warrior and Caleb. "Silence, Kano. You speak out of turn." The warrior, Kano, glared at her. "You were promised to me before your third summer, daughter of Taroval. Your disappearance delayed our binding ceremony. And now you defend this pale creature?" The shaman's expression hardened. "My daughter speaks truth. Kano, you forget yourself." "I forget nothing," Kano spat. "I remember the old lines when strength determined leadership. When the Sayari did not bow to creatures who fell from the squatchy, his hand moved to the hilt of his blade. I challenge the human. Let him prove his worth or die trying." Gasps arose from both sides of the standoff. Caleb felt the blood drain from his face as he realized what was happening. Liara had never mentioned being promised to another. "Kano invokes the right of challenge," the shaman said gravely. "By our laws, it must be answered." "This is insane," Fletcher interjected. "The boy is 17. You can't expect him to fight one of your warriors." "If he refuses," Taroval replied, "it will be seen as weakness. The debt of honor will be nullified." Caleb stepped forward. "What does this challenge involve?" The shaman regarded him with newfound respect. "Single combat, first blood, or surrender?" Kano smirked. "Unless the human prefers to fight to the death." "First blood is sufficient," Taroval said firmly. Liara grabbed Caleb's arm. "You don't understand. Kano is our fiercest warrior. He has never lost a challenge." "What happens if I lose?" Caleb asked. "You will be shamed," the shaman answered, "and Liara will be bound to Kano, as was arranged in her childhood." Caleb looked at Liara, saw the fear in her golden eyes. Not for him, he realized, but for herself. This wasn't just about honor. This was about her freedom. "I accept the challenge," he said. Fletcher grabbed his shoulder. "Mercer, have you lost your mind? You can't." "It's my choice," Caleb cut him off. Either we resolve this peacefully, or this turns into a battle where people on both sides die. The shaman granted Caleb 1 day to prepare for the challenge. The settlement buzzed with tension as humans and Sayeri maintained an uneasy truce. Each side camped on opposite ends of the clearing. Sarah, the medic Liara had helped save, visited Caleb as he sat alone by the settlement's central fire. "You're either the bravest or stupidest person I've ever met," she said, sitting beside him. "Probably both." "I don't have much choice," Caleb replied. "There's always a choice." She handed him a small container. "Medicinal salve. It won't help you win, but it might help you heal afterward." Her expression softened. "If there is an afterward." "Thanks for the vote of confidence." Sarah studied him curiously. "You really care about her, don't you? The Sayeri girl." Caleb stared into the flames. "She didn't ask for any of this. She was just trying to survive." "Weren't we all?" Sarah murmured, gazing toward the stars, the same stars their colony ship had navigated before stranding them on this alien world. At dawn, Liara slipped into the settlement to find Caleb. She carried a small pouch filled with a dark powder. "War paint," she explained. "It will help you move faster, see clearer." "Is that allowed?" Caleb asked skeptically. "It is traditional. Kano will wear his own." She began applying the mixture to his face and arms with practiced movements. "He will attack aggressively," she explained. "It is the Sayeri way, but his pride makes him predictable. Watch for his left feint. He always strikes true from the right." "Any other weaknesses I should know about?" "He favors his right leg, an old injury from a hunt. When forced to pivot quickly, he sometimes falters." Her fingers lingered on his cheek. "But do not underestimate him, Caleb. He has killed 17 challengers." 17? Caleb's mouth went dry. "And you're just mentioning this now?" A ghost of a smile touched her lips. "Would it have changed your answer?" He thought about it, then shook his head. "No. That is why you might survive." She pressed something into his palm, a small blue stone on a leather cord. "For luck, though the Sayeri do not believe in such things." "What do you believe in?" "Skill, courage, and the will to survive." Her golden eyes met his. "You have all three." The clearing was quickly transformed into a combat circle, with warriors and settlers forming its boundaries. Someone passed Caleb a knife, not his own familiar blade, but a colony-made one with a proper grip. Kano stood opposite him, having removed his upper garments to reveal a torso covered in ritual scars and battle marks. He held a curved knife that gleamed in the late afternoon sunlight. "The rules are simple," Teravala now said. "The circle is your boundary. First blood drawn or surrender ends the match. There will be no interference." He looked pointedly at both Sayeri warriors and human defenders. Liara approached Caleb one last time, speaking low and urgent. "Remember what I told you. His left feint." "I remember," Caleb assured her. Before she left, she pressed her forehead briefly against his, a Sayera gesture he didn't understand but felt the significance of. Then she was pulled back into the circle of onlookers. The shaman raised his staff, then brought it down with a resonant crack against the ground. Kano lunged immediately, covering the distance between them with frightening speed. Caleb barely managed to sidestep, the warrior's blade slicing air where his chest had been a moment before. The crowd roared, excitement from the Sayeri, concern from the humans. Caleb had never been a fighter. His skills lay in farming, animal husbandry, and mechanical repairs. But he had wrestled with other settlement boys, and he understood leverage and momentum. He backpedaled, keeping space between himself and the enraged warrior. "Stand and fight, human," Kano snarled, circling. Caleb kept his breathing steady, watching Kano's movements. The warrior was strong but heavy-footed. Each step telegraphed his next move, a trait that probably didn't matter against opponents who met him head-on, but might give Caleb an edge if he stayed defensive. Kano feinted left, just as Liara had warned, then slashed from the right. This time, instead of retreating, Caleb ducked under the blow and drove his shoulder into the warrior's midsection. Kano grunted in surprise but remained standing, bringing his elbow down hard on Caleb's back. Pain exploded between Caleb's shoulder blades. He rolled away, narrowly avoiding a follow-up strike that would have pinned him to the ground. The crowd's roar intensified. "The human has spirit," someone called out in heavily accented English. Kano's expression darkened. He had expected an easy victory, Caleb realized. The warrior wasn't just fighting for Liara, he was fighting to save face. They circled each other again. Caleb's back throbbed, but adrenaline dulled the pain. He fainted forward, causing Kano to bring up his knife in defense, then darted back. You dance like a female, Kano taunted. Strike, if you have the courage. Instead of responding, Caleb studied the warrior's stance. Kano favored his right leg slightly, an old injury perhaps. When he moved, his weight shifted momentarily, creating a fraction of imbalance. Kano tired of waiting and charged again. This time, Caleb sidestepped and stuck out his foot. The warrior, caught mid-stride, stumbled. Caleb slashed with his knife, opening a shallow cut along Kano's upper arm. Blood, dark violet against blue skin, welled from the wound. Silence fell over the clearing. Kano stared at his arm in disbelief, then at Caleb with murderous rage. First blood has been drawn, Taroval announced. The challenge is complete. Caleb Mercer stands victorious. For a moment, it seemed Kano might ignore the ruling and attack again. His hand tightened on his knife, his body coiling to spring. But a dozen Sayuri warriors stepped forward, making it clear they would enforce their shaman's declaration. With a snarl of frustration, Kano sheathed his blade. This proves nothing, Sha, he spat. The human got lucky. The human, Taroval replied calmly, demonstrated courage and skill against a superior opponent. The ancestors have spoken through his victory. He turned to Caleb. You have earned the respect of the Sayuri this day. The tension in the clearing began to dissipate. Sayuri warriors lowered their weapons. Human defenders, taking cues from Fletcher, cautiously did the same. Liara broke from the crowd and approached Caleb, her golden eyes shining with something he couldn't quite identify. Relief, gratitude, and perhaps something more. You fought well, she said softly. Few have ever bested Kano. Caleb managed a shaky smile. I got lucky, and I had good advice. The shaman joined them, placing a hand on his daughter's shoulder. The debt of honor is doubled now. You saved my daughter's life and freed her from an unwanted binding. He studied Caleb thoughtfully. Perhaps the ancestors guided your people to our world for a purpose greater than we understood. Fletcher pushed through the crowd, his face a mask of conflicting emotions. Mercer, the council will still have questions about this situation. I understand, Caleb replied. As a gesture of our gratitude, Taroval said, the Sayuri offer a pact of peace with your settlement. Our hunters will share territories. Our healers will exchange knowledge. Our warriors will protect your boundaries from the Kuroshi and other threats. Fletcher's eyes widened. The settlement had struggled with limited resources and constant threats since landing. Such an alliance could change everything. That would need to be discussed with our full council, he said cautiously. Of course, the shaman made a gesture and his warriors began to withdraw. We will return in 3 days for your answer. He looked at Caleb, and to properly honor our new brother. As the Sayuri departed with Liara reluctantly among them, Caleb found himself the center of attention from the entire settlement. Some faces showed anger at his deception, others wonder at what he had accomplished. His father pushed through the crowd, equal parts fury and relief on his weathered face. Son, what were you thinking? You could have been killed. I couldn't leave her to die, Dad, Caleb said simply, and I couldn't let you all go on fearing them without knowing the truth. That night, after hours of questioning by the council, Caleb finally returned to his family's dwelling. Exhaustion pulled at him, but sleep remained elusive. His body ached from the fight with Kano, and his mind raced with thoughts of Liara. Had he done the right thing letting her go with her people? Would the council accept Taroval's offer of alliance? And what of Kano? Would he accept his defeat so easily? A soft tap at his window startled him from his thoughts. He opened it to find Liara crouched on the sill, a finger to her lips. You shouldn't be here, he whispered, helping her inside. If you're caught. I won't be, she assured him. The Sayuri move like shadows when we wish to. In the dim light, her blue skin seemed to glow faintly. I had to warn you. Warn me about what? Kano, he has gathered followers, warriors who believe as he does that the Sayuri should drive all humans from our world. Her golden eyes were grave. They planned to attack your settlement before the peace ceremony. Caleb's blood ran cold. When? Tomorrow night. They will strike from the west, where your defenses are weakest. She gripped his arm. My father does not know. Kano moves in secret, challenging his authority. I have to warn Fletcher and the council. If you tell them the Sairi plan an attack, they will prepare for war, not peace. My father's offer will be rejected. Then what do we do? Liara's expression was determined. We stop Kano ourselves. How? There's just the two of us against how many warriors? 12, his most loyal followers. She reached beneath her garment and produced a small pouch. I brought these. War paint of the Sairi. With it, you can move unseen in the night forest. Caleb stared at her. You want us to ambush them? That's suicide. Not ambush, expose. If we can capture Kano and bring him before my father, his treachery will be revealed. He will lose all honor among our people. It was madness. 2 teenagers against 12 hardened warriors. And yet, the alternative was worse. War between their peoples, with countless deaths on both sides. Where will they gather? Caleb asked. The Western Ridge. There is a cave where Kano trains his followers in secret. She pulled a crude map from her pouch, drawn on a piece of bark. Here, they will meet at nightfall to prepare their attack. Caleb studied the map, recognizing the landform she indicated. That's at least 2 hours' hike from here. We must leave before dawn. Her eyes searched his. Will you come, or should I face them alone? The question wasn't fair, and they both knew it. I'll come, Caleb said, but we need a plan better than just capture Kano. They spent the next hour plotting their approach, drawing on Liara's knowledge of Sa'i tactics and Caleb's familiarity with the terrain. When they finished, neither was confident of success, but it was better than nothing. Get some rest, Liara said eventually. I'll return before sunrise. Wait, Caleb reached under his bed and pulled out the thermal blanket he had given her in the barn. Take this, the nights are cold in the mountains. Liara accepted the blanket, her fingers brushing his. Your people create wonders, she said softly. Perhaps together, our peoples could create even greater ones. With that, she slipped out the window and vanished into the night. Dawn hadn't yet broken when Liara returned. Caleb was ready, having packed a small rucksack with essentials, water, ration bars, basic medical supplies, and his trusted hunting knife. He left a vague note for his parents, claiming he was going on an early hunting expedition. They moved through the forest with Liara leading the way, her natural affinity for the wilderness evident in every silent step. Caleb did his best to match her stealth, though he felt clumsy by comparison. The strange blue foliage that had once seemed so alien to him now provided welcome cover as they climbed toward the western ridge. We should reach the cave by midday, Liara whispered during a brief rest. That will give us time to scout their gathering place before Kano arrives. The terrain grew steeper, forcing them to use hands as well as feet to ascend. Sweat soaked Caleb's shirt despite the cool mountain air. Liara moved with enviable ease, her body seemingly adapted to the rugged landscape. As they neared the top of the ridge, Liara suddenly froze, raising a hand in warning. Caleb stopped, straining his ears. At first he heard nothing beyond the soft rustling of leaves in the breeze. Then, voices, speaking the harsh, guttural dialect of the Na'vi language. Scouts, Liara breathed, pulling Caleb behind a massive boulder. 2 of them. Through a narrow gap between rocks, Caleb glimpsed 2 Sairi warriors moving along the ridge, bows ready in their hands. They wore minimal tribal markings, Kano's followers, attempting to avoid identification with their clan. They're early, Caleb whispered. Your information was incomplete, Liara finished, her expression troubled. Kano is more cautious than I anticipated. The scouts passed within 10 meters of their hiding place, so close that Caleb could see the individual feathers adorning their weapons. For a heart-stopping moment, one warrior paused, head cocked as though listening. Then, apparently satisfied, he moved on. We can't approach the cave from this direction, Liara said once the scouts were out of earshot. Not without being seen. Caleb studied the ridgeline. There, he pointed to a narrow ravine cutting across their path. If we follow that down and around, we might be able to approach from below. Liara nodded. Good eye. The Sairi rarely guard from beneath. It is not our way to expect enemies to climb toward us. The ravine provided cover but made for treacherous going. Loose rocks threatened to trigger miniature avalanches with each step. Twice, Caleb nearly lost his footing on the steep descent, saved only by Liara's quick reflexes. As they rounded the base of the ridge, the cave mouth came into view, a dark gash in the mountainside partially hidden by a curtain of hanging vines. 2 more warriors stood guard, their posture alert and weapons ready. How do we get past them? Caleb whispered. Liara reached for her pouch. The war paint. It will help us blend with the shadows. She began applying dark blue and black pigment to his foam in precise patterns. Like this, she instructed, guiding Caleb's fingers as he mimicked her movements. The paint felt cool against his skin, with a faint, tingling sensation that spread as it dried. To his amazement, when Lei moved into a patch of dappled shadow, she seemed to partially disappear, her outline blurring into the surrounding darkness. How does it work? He asked, fascinated. The paint comes from the bark of the ghost tree. It absorbs light rather than reflecting it. She smiled at his wonder. Not all Sci-Fi advantages come from strength, Caleb Mercer. They work their way carefully up the slope beneath the cave, using every bit of cover available. When they reached a position directly below the guards, Liara produced a small hollow reed from her pouch. What's that? Caleb whispered. Sleep dart, she replied, loading a tiny projectile into the reed. It will not harm them permanently. With calm precision, she brought the reed to her lips and exhaled sharply. The guard on the left suddenly slapped his neck, as though stung by an insect. Within seconds, his posture slackened, and he slumped against the cave wall. The second guard turned in alarm, reaching for his weapon, only to receive a dart of his own. He managed 2 stumbling steps before collapsing beside his companion. Quickly, Liara urged, already moving toward the cave entrance. The sedative lasts only minutes. They dragged the unconscious guards into a nearby thicket, binding them with strips of vine. Inside the cave, torches illuminated a larger space than Caleb had expected. Crude drawings covered the walls. Battle plans, he realized with a chill. Diagrams of Northridge settlement, with attack vectors clearly marked. Kano plans more than a simple raid, Lara whispered, studying the drawings. This is a full assault strategy. We have to warn both our peoples, Caleb said. This goes beyond just us now. A sound at the cave entrance made them both freeze. Footsteps approached, multiple warriors returning from patrol. They pressed themselves into a shadowy alcove, the war paint rendering them nearly invisible in the flickering torchlight. 3 warriors entered, speaking in low tones. One Caleb recognized immediately, Kano, his scarred face set in a permanent scowl. The other 2 were unfamiliar, but from their deference, clearly subordinates. The perimeter is secure, one reported. No sign of Taroval's loyalists. Kano nodded. Good. The others will arrive by nightfall. We move against the human settlement at midnight. And the shaman? The third warrior asked. What if he interferes? Kano's expression darkened. My challenge to the human was legal under tribal law. My challenge to Taroval will be equally so. He tapped a ceremonial knife at his belt. Tonight, the Sci-Fi will have a new leader, one who will restore our glory by driving the sky fallen from our world. Caleb felt Liara stiffen beside him. The planned coup was worse than they had imagined. Not just an attack on the settlement, but the overthrow of Taroval himself. We must get back, Liara breathed, barely audible. Now. They began inching toward the cave entrance, staying within the deepest shadows. They had almost reached the threshold when disaster struck. Caleb's foot dislodged a small stone, sending it skittering across the cave floor. The warriors spun toward the sound, weapons instantly in hand. Intruders, Kano barked. Find them! In the chaos that followed, Caleb and Liara abandoned stealth for speed. They burst from the cave, sprinting down the slope as shouts erupted behind them. Arrows whistled past, embedding in trees and earth around them. Split up, Liara called. Meet at the river junction. Before Caleb could protest, she veered right, drawing several pursuers after her. The remaining warriors, including Kano himself, focused on Caleb, recognizing the human as the greater prize. Caleb ran as he'd never run before, leaping fallen logs and crashing through underbrush. His familiarity with the terrain gave him a slight advantage, but the Sci-Fi warriors were faster and more agile. The gap between them steadily narrowed. An arrow grazed his arm, tearing fabric and skin. Another narrowly missed his head. Desperation fueled his flight as he reached the edge of a steep ravine, too wide to jump, too deep to survive a fall. Trapped, he turned to face his pursuers. Kano approached slowly, savoring the moment, flanked by 2 warriors with arrows nocked and ready. The human who thinks himself a warrior, Kano sneered. Did you really believe you could interfere with my plans? Your plans will destroy both our peoples, Caleb replied, fighting to control his breathing. The settlement will fight back. There will be casualties on both sides. As there should be, Kano's voice rose with fervor. We are warriors. We do not make peace with invaders. He drew his ceremonial knife, the one he had indicated would be used against Taraval. Your death will be the first of many tonight. As Kano stepped forward, a battle cry split the air. Liara launched herself from an overhanging branch, landing directly on one of the archers. The warrior went down hard, his bow clattering away. The second archer swung around, trying to target Liara, giving Caleb the opening he needed. He tackled the archer, driving him to the ground. They rolled in the dirt, fighting for control of the weapon. Caleb managed to slam the warrior's wrist against a rock, forcing him to release the bow. Meanwhile, Liara faced Kano in single combat. Her movements were fluid and precise, but Kano was stronger and more experienced. He drove her back step by step toward the ravine edge. You betray your own people for this human, Kano snarled, slashing with his blade. Liara evaded the strike by millimeters. I fight to protect my people from you. Caleb dispatched his opponent with a solid blow to the temple, then grabbed the fallen bow. He knocked an arrow, aimed at Kano, but hesitated. The warriors were moving too quickly, grappling at the edge of the ravine. He couldn't risk hitting Liara. Kano seized Liara's throat, lifting her off her feet. Your father's weakness flows in your veins, he growled, dangling her over the ravine. The Sairi will be stronger without the line of Taroval. No! Caleb shouted, charging forward. He crashed into Kano's side, disrupting his grip on Liara. All three tumbled dangerously close to the edge. Rocks crumbled beneath them as they grappled. Caleb landed a solid punch to Kano's jaw, but the warrior barely flinched. A backhanded blow sent Caleb sprawling. Liara used the distraction to retrieve Kano's dropped knife. She lunged, but Kano anticipated the move, grabbing her wrist and twisting until she cried out in pain. In that moment of distraction, the ground beneath them gave way. The ravine edge collapsed, sending Kano and Liara plummeting into the chasm below. Caleb lunged, managing to seize Liara's hand as she fell. He found himself half hanging over the edge, holding her full weight with one arm, while scrabbling for purchase with his free hand and feet. Kano wasn't so fortunate. His scream echoed as he disappeared into the mist-filled depths. Hold on, Caleb gasped, feeling his grip on both Liara and the crumbling edge weakening. Let me go, Liara said, looking up at him with calm acceptance. Save yourself. Not an option, Caleb grunted, redoubling his effort. With agonizing slowness, he managed to pull her up until she could grab the edge herself. Together they crawled away from the treacherous rim, collapsing on solid ground, chest heaving. We have to warn everyone, Caleb said between gasps. Kano may be gone, but his followers will still attack. Liara nodded, wincing as she stood. My father first. He can recall the warriors loyal to him. They made their way down the mountain as quickly as their battered bodies allowed. The sun was already setting by the time they reached the Sairi encampment, a collection of hide tents arranged in concentric circles around a central fire pit. Their arrival caused immediate commotion. Warriors surrounded them, spears leveled, until Liara called out for her father. Taroval emerged from the largest tent, his expression cycling rapidly from surprise to relief to concern. Daughter, what has happened? He rushed forward, noting their injuries and disheveled state. Between them, Caleb and Liara explained everything. Kano's plot, the planned attack on both Taroval and the settlement, their confrontation at the cave, and Kano's fall. The shaman's face grew grave. Kano had more supporters than I realized. Even now, they may be gathering for the attack. He turned to his personal guard. Summon the loyal warriors. We must prevent this betrayal from sparking war with the humans. We need to warn my settlement too, Caleb insisted. If armed Sairi approach in the darkness, our defenders will shoot first and ask questions later. Taroval nodded. Go, take my fastest runners as escorts. Ensure your leaders understand we come as allies, not enemies. The journey back to Northridge was a blur of exertion and urgency. Flanked by 3 Sairi warriors, Caleb raced through the darkening forest, ignoring the protests of his exhausted muscles. They reached the settlement just as the perimeter lights activated for the night. Guards raised weapons at their approach until Caleb shouted his identity. Fletcher himself came to the gate, gaping at the sight of the human boy in the company of Sairi warriors. We have an emergency, Caleb gasped. Rogue Sairi warriors are planning to attack tonight. Taroval is gathering forces to stop them, but they might reach us first. Fletcher's training took over. He issued rapid orders to reinforce the perimeter, arm all capable defenders, and move non-combatants to the central shelter. How many attackers? He demanded. Perhaps 20, Caleb estimated. Possibly more. And how many is Taroval bringing? At least twice that number, one of the Sairi escorts answered in accented English. But we may not arrive before the traitors. Fletcher hesitated only briefly. We'll hold until you arrive. But I need to be absolutely clear. Your warriors will identify themselves how? White banners, the warrior replied, the color of Taroval's house. The traitors will bear no such markings. The settlement transformed into a fortress within minutes. Every able body took up position, some with the colony's limited supply of firearms, others with makeshift weapons. Caleb found himself assigned to the western barricade alongside Sarah, the medic he and Liara had saved from the raiders. Quite the trouble you've stirred up, she remarked, checking the charge on her shock baton. Not intentionally, Caleb replied, scanning the tree line for movement. Sometimes the most important changes aren't intentional. She gave him a sidelong glance. The council was going to exile you, before all this, for harboring an alien. Caleb wasn't surprised. The settlement's rules about contact with indigenous species were strict. And now? Sarah shrugged. Now you might have saved us all. Funny how things work out. The attack came suddenly, dark shapes emerging from the forest without warning or war cry. Arrows arced over the barricades, forcing defenders to duck for cover. Several of Kano's followers reached the perimeter fence, hacking at the barrier with primitive but effective axes. Hold the line, Fletcher shouted from his position at the main gate. Reinforcements are coming. Caleb fired his borrowed bow at the attackers, more to keep them at bay than with any real hope of hitting targets in the darkness. Beside him, Sarah wielded her shock baton with surprising skill, repelling a warrior who managed to scale the fence. The battle hung in precarious balance, the settlement's superior defensive position offset by the Sairi warriors' greater numbers and combat experience. Just as it seemed the perimeter might collapse, new sounds rose from the forest, rhythmic drums and battle cries that Caleb recognized as the signature of Taroval's forces. White banners appeared at the forest edge, illuminated by the settlement's perimeter lights. Taroval's warriors fell upon Kano's followers from behind, creating immediate chaos in their ranks. Caught between settlement defenders and loyal Sairi, the attackers quickly lost cohesion. In the midst of the fighting, Caleb spotted Liara moving through the battle with deadly grace, disabling opponents with precise strikes rather than killing blows. Even in combat, the shaman's daughter showed mercy. The battle ended as suddenly as it had begun. Outnumbered and outflanked, the surviving attackers surrendered or fled into the darkness. Taroval himself approached the settlement gate, white banner in hand, requesting entry. Fletcher, after a moment's consideration, ordered the gate opened. The shaman entered, followed by Lerau and a small honor guard. The two leaders met in the central clearing, surrounded by wary fighters from both sides. The threat is ended, Taroval announced. Those who followed Kano have been captured or scattered. They will face tribal justice for their betrayal. Fletcher's posture remained tense. And what guarantees do we have that this won't happen again? That some other faction of your people won't decide humans need to be exterminated? No absolute guarantee can exist between any peoples, the shaman replied. But perhaps something stronger than guarantees, mutual need and respect. He gestured to where Caleb and Liara stood side by side, bloodied but unbowed. Our young have shown us a better path than suspicion and separation. The settlement council convened an emergency session right there in the clearing. After heated debate, a decision was reached. The alliance Taroval had proposed days earlier would be accepted, with additions addressing mutual defense and cultural exchange. 3 days later, as promised, the Sairi returned in full ceremonial regalia. This time, there was no tension, no standoff at the perimeter. The settlement's gates opened to welcome them, with the full council assembled to receive Taroval and his delegation. Caleb stood at the forefront, the blue stone pendant Liara had given him visible against his best shirt. When Liara emerged from among the warriors, their eyes met across the clearing, and for a moment it seemed they were the only two people in existence. The ceremony that followed united the two peoples in ways none could have predicted. Taraval declared Caleb an honorary member of the Sayuri, marking his forehead with white paint that symbolized his new status. In return, the council granted Liara freedom to move within the settlement, the first Azure one to receive such privilege. As the formal proceedings concluded, Liara found Caleb at the edge of the celebration. "My father has appointed me liaison to your settlement," she said, "because of my language skills. And the council has named me their representative to the Sayuri," Caleb replied with a smile. "It seems we'll be seeing a lot of each other." Liara's golden eyes studied him. "The blanket you gave me when I was wounded. Such a simple act of kindness. Who could have known it would lead to this?" From a pouch at her waist, she withdrew the thermal blanket, now folded into a small square. "I return it to you, Caleb Mercer, not because I do not value it, but because I no longer need it to remember your compassion." Caleb shook his head, gently pushing it back toward her. "Keep it, as a reminder that sometimes the smallest gestures can change worlds." That night, as humans and Sayuri celebrated their new alliance around shared fires, trading stories and cautiously sampling each other's foods, Caleb watched Liara demonstrating Sayuri hunting signals to fascinated settlement children. Sarah joined him, following his gaze with a knowing smile. "So the boy who gave his blanket to an alien girl ends up changing the fate of two species." "I just did what seemed right at the time," Caleb replied. "That's usually how the best changes happen." She nudged his shoulder. "What now, diplomat?" Caleb looked out over the gathering, humans and Naya V working to overcome centuries of isolation and distrust, finding common ground in their shared struggle to survive on this beautiful, dangerous world. "Now we build something new," he said, "together."